Hello and welcome to Founders Amplified, where we spotlight underrepresented founders who are driving innovation and impact across various industries and sectors across the globe. I'm your host, Narayan Kulkarni, and I'm excited to be here with you today. In today's bonus episode, our very first featuring a guest interview, our guest is Pars Barghandan. Pars Barghandan is a serial tech entrepreneur with a proven track record of building and scaling startups in high-impact, high-friction markets. Having founded 3 ventures, including 1 successful exit, he has led cross-functional teams of 50-plus professionals across product, engineering, and operations, often in the CEO role. Pars thrives where others hesitate, driven by a passion for innovation, disruption, and creating meaningful impact at scale. He is currently the founder and CEO of Noxy Incorporated, a cutting-edge wireless telecom startup revolutionizing connectivity infrastructure with a focus on simplicity, automation, global coverage, and equitable access to technology. Under his leadership, Noxy is reshaping the future of telecom, offering solutions designed for a more connected, inclusive world. So, now that you know a little bit about Pars, let's dive in to the conversation. So, hello everyone, and welcome to Founders Amplified. So this is our very first bonus episode, and we have this with Pars Barghandan of Noxy. And so, as you all know, as it's a bonus episode, we're going to be doing something a little bit different in the format. So depending on what the guest wants. So Pars, for example, he wanted to have a slightly longer conversation than what we usually do. And what we'll be doing is we'll be having 2 parts. This will be the first part, then we'll be queuing into the second part. And so you'll see a very similar format, but different like level of depth, and also it's going to be a little bit laid back. So like Pars and I might be drinking some coffee. Pars might be like drinking some water, and that's totally fine. Yeah. But yeah, let's get started. So welcome to Founders Amplified, Pars. How are you doing today, sir?
Hi Narayan, and hello to everyone who is listening and watching to this podcast. It's great to be here, and I'm doing very well, and I hope everyone is well now. And it's great to be here, and thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. So let's get started where we usually get started. I'd love to hear a bit more about your journey. So can you tell me about what was the thing that led you to become a founder, and if there are any particular moments or experiences that were particularly strong sparks that made that decision a reality?
Yeah, so actually, it started a long time ago. So I was like a normal person, normal student that wanted to have a job in a company. So I was applying to different jobs, and then I was looking for opportunities that I can, gain more experience and all of these things. So I started as an engineer. So I applied to different positions in different companies, and one of the companies accepted the job application. They told me like, okay, let's have a discussion about that. So in the first part, like I was in one city, which was like north of Iran, and then the company was in Tehran. So the distance was like 4 hours driving. And what happened was like I was thinking maybe the first phase of interview would be the in online calls via Zoom or something like that. And strangely, they said like, hey, we have this job. If you want, you have to come to Tehran, and we have to have a first meeting in person. So I said it's fine because I really wanted to gain more experience, and I really like had the motivation to work in the companies, and it was a really big company, to be honest. So what happened was, I took a bus, and it was like 4 a.m. in the morning. So I took the bus, went to Tehran. It was like I arrived at 8:30, and I was really tired, right? So I went to the office, I sit down. They gave me a form, and I filled that form for like 30, 40 minutes. And then after that, they said, okay, we will call you back without any interview, right? So it was just doing that form, and they said like, okay, we will call you back. And I said, okay, I came with bus from like in the morning from 4 a.m. I arrived here. I immediately came to your office and I was waiting for to have like an interview or at least like showing the product, showing the like projects that I did before and all of these things. But strangely, they just said, no, this is how it is. So you just fill the form, we will get back to you.
Wow.
That was actually the most emotional part. So when I came out to the office, I called my father and said, this is what they said, and this is the process. And he told me he was like he had the entrepreneurial, spirit, and he really wanted to have his own job as well. But he was like an employee as well. So he told me, son, this is how it works. If you want to work for other people, you have to go like this. This is the way it proceeds in the world. And that was actually the most important time for me. So I said, okay, I will go for my own job. I will found my company, my startup, and then start to build something to have a positive impact and not to be like these people, right? Respect my employees, respect the people that I'm going to work with them and all of these things. So that was the whole process. And the thing here is that at that time, I didn't know anything about business. Right. So, I mean, I was a good salesperson. I was working in the like some shops to sell devices or these things, but it was not like a real entrepreneur that can, business models, how to market the product and these types of specific things. So I was started with a safety app, a normal project, and then that whole process, it was a failure, but it was a nice journey that I learned lots of things. And then after that, we found other startups, learned lots of things in that whole journey. It was a tough journey. So I sacrificed lots of things. The family specifically supported me. So that was the most important part. Normally, the thing is that the family says, you have to work for other people, you have to make some money. And entrepreneurship is not for everyone, is not fit for everyone. And then so fortunately, my parents supported me a lot on that whole process. And what we did is like I gained lots of experience on how to have different maneuvers in different situations in the startup world. And fortunately, after some time, after working in the startups, I actually sold my previous company, which was an entertainment platform. And then after that, we founded Noxy. But in that whole process, it was tough. It was not easy, and as I said, I sacrificed lots of things in that whole process, which normally most of the people don't want to do that, right? So, but it was a really good journey. Learned lots of things, gained lots of experience, and strangely, on that whole process, it was really fun because I founded one startup. Then I run out of cash. I have to work in like two, three companies or freelancing and get some money and then pump it to the business again and then launch another startup. So that was the whole process, right? So you ran out of cash, you work, do some freelance, then bring the cash to your company and then go like this. It's actually cycles.
Wow. First of all, that's an amazing, sounds like a turbulent, intense journey, but also it's been a very fruitful one up until founding Noxy right now. One thing which I wanted to understand a little bit more. So as you talked about, you grew up in Iran, and that was in like the start of your journey, but also now like you live in Europe and working and are like building Noxy from another continent. Can you tell me more about how has your upbringing in Iran, in Iranian culture, how has that shaped your entrepreneurial spirit and your like approach to entrepreneurship? And how might
Yeah.
that like give you a unique edge in how you relate to uh, employees and like do your work?
Exactly. So the whole process actually, I was born and grew up in Turkey, right? And then moved to Iran. And that whole process, to be honest, like the culture in Turkey and Iran is actually similar. And the most important part that actually shaped my characteristics or motivation for entrepreneurship and business and all of this thing was the limitations. So that's what I believe, like limitations will bring creativity, will bring innovation in different fields. And in Iran, as most of the people can understand, it's actually a limited country. You're not allowed to do some specific things. You are not also in the business side. Like if you found a very good company, a very successful company, it's a bit difficult to grow that company because it automatically goes to the sanction list of the United Nations and all of these things. But that's the most important part. It was bringing the like based on the limitations that we had, I learned that I have to bring innovation. I have to be more creative so that I can bypass these limitations. And I had two options, either stay in Iran after like moving from Turkey to Iran, or I had an option to go to Sri Lanka and then live there for 1 year and then received an offer and came to Switzerland, right? So that was the whole process. And, in that whole process, also culture really matters because in Iran, it's a bit difficult to be a founder because the relatives, the people around you might not have that specific mindset of like entrepreneurial mindset, and that's the most important part that you have to, find the, be flexible and also, you have to sacrifice, right? So most of the people around me at that time, except my family, was like why you're doing like this, why you're building something like this. Just go and work for any other person, and then you make some money, you buy some car, you just build a family and live there. But fortunately, as I said, the support of the family was really important, my parents, my family. And then I moved from Iran to Sri Lanka and then came to Switzerland and like built Noxy now.
Wow, thanks for sharing. Something else which you talked about was the importance of family. And it's specifically, I was very poignant to hear like your dad and your conversation with him in that particular like very intense interview moment. Can you tell me and our audience more about
Yeah,
how, in more detail, how did your family shape you? And like your values and like the support that they gave you that really helped you in
yeah.
your entrepreneurship journey.
Yeah, sure. So at that time, like before that, even my dad was like supporting me a lot for everything. So I was trying to, like not the startup part, but everything I wanted to learn, everything I wanted to build or something like this. My father was supporting me. Like, let's say I wanted to, um, you know, let's say buy something, buy a computer or buy a laptop or buy a specific instrument to, let's say, practice music or practice anything specifically, right? And without any questioning, he was like purchasing that or he was trying to buy that. Although, let's say, he had some financial issues at that time, right? And because he was believing that, um, he should support the generations so that the next generation would support the next generation. So it will be like a loop, right? And unfortunately, during his own time when he was a young student, he didn't had the opportunity to be supported by his own family, right? And at that time, this created the mindset that, okay, I have to support my family, my son, so that he can grow in the community, in the whole process. And it was really, the most important part. And strangely, like after that rejection of the job offer, he told me that, okay, I will buy you a like big TV monitor format, and then I will create like a specific room for you in the house that you can just start work on your startups, right? So that was the most important thing that he actually shaped that entrepreneurial format, and he gave me whatever I needed to be able to just focus on that one, right? And that was the most important. But so I can say, like, it's like he was the most influential person in my whole life that's shaped me, and also he has lots of influence on Noxy, which is now, right? So that's all about that.
Wow, thanks for sharing. And it is amazing to reflect on that. And I will also, because for example, as someone who is originally from India, but I have lived in the U.S. for much of my life, but I haven't connected with, and I do like, for example, mentor people who are in India. I definitely can resonate with the point that like in numerous, and I've also mentored people in many different like countries in Asia that that culture can sometimes affect um, the conduciveness, broader reception towards entrepreneurship. But of course, there are people anywhere in the world who do have that mindset and they can be supportive. And sometimes that can be family members. And I have, of course, heard about, and to your point, yes, I think family can be really powerful. But what you shared, which I think was particularly poignant, was yeah, like there can be one really strong person, in your case, sounds like it was your dad, that can really provide that energy and inspiration. So thanks for sharing. So now,
Yeah.
the next thing I wanted to learn about, but then of course we'll talk a little much more about Noxie. So you talked about your move. So you're originally from Turkey, as I mentioned. You grew up in Iran, then you moved to Sri Lanka, and then so it sounds like you've gone across multiple different borders. You're both an immigrant, but also like you've been an expatriate, et cetera. So you've had that experience of like cross-border experiences of entrepreneurship. How has that shaped your journey, and more particularly, your unique angle that you're bringing to Noxie?
Yeah. So, I mean, to be honest, it's very difficult to, because initially I was in Turkey and then I was adapting to that community. I was building my network in Turkey. I shaped in Turkey. And then after that, we moved to Iran. And there, I lost all of my connections and networks and everything I built in Turkey, right? And then because it's a different culture. Then I moved to Iran. There, I had to start from the scratch, right? I built everything again, my network, my like people around me, what I have to do, and everything. And then after some point, as I told you, I had to make a decision to either be limited in Iran or like not as a startup point of view, or just go to another country that can be a bridge for me to come to either to Europe or US so that I can build the next big thing, right? And I actually decided to leave my homeland. So everything that I built there was again removed, and then I moved to Sri Lanka. There I lived for 1 year. And there also, I made lots of good contacts, to be honest, with the industry experts, with the people that can be specifically influential in my operations in Sri Lanka. And thereafter that, I received an offer from Switzerland, which actually was my goal, right? Because Sri Lanka was acting as a bridge for me to come to Europe so that I can, you know, increase my network, expand my network. So yeah, so I came to Europe, but when I came to Europe, that was the most difficult part because, to be honest, I received like my father gave me a loan for $25,000, and that was the loan. So right, I mean, personally, we call it loan between my father because I don't want to just say like he helped me, right? So it's a loan. I have to pay him back. That's the way. Like he did an investment on me, so it's my responsibility to pay it back or give him a return on investment. That's at least my mindset. So I got that money. I came to Switzerland. First years it was very difficult because you have no network, you have nothing, and you have to build it again from scratch. But fortunately, my experience in Turkey, Iran, and Sri Lanka helped me to detect the pain points and try to, speed up that whole process of networking and trying to, work on different companies and all of these things. And I mean, when I came here, it's a different language, it's a different culture, it's a different type of people. So you have to be really flexible and really try to adapt yourself to this community here. And that's the most important part. So, I mean, here I built I mean, I didn't build, but I tried to build two, three startups which failed, right? And I didn't know how to fix that problem. It's like a loophole. You don't know what you have to do to make it successful startup, and that's actually the strange part. But fortunately, it's actually like 50% chance, 50% effort. that's helped us to found Noxus successfully, at least at this point of time.
Well, thanks for sharing, and particularly your point about having to rebuild and like in different parts. For our audience, this we're talking about pre-LinkedIn, like largely pre-social media times in
Yep.
key parts of Pars's journey for context, but also yeah, like in many parts of the world, having in-person connections is really important. That still remains the case in the startup world and in like the global entrepreneurship ecosystem, even if, of course, we have like increasing social connectivity. So that's one thing I apply. But also, it sounds like you've gained a lot of perspective in those different contexts, in addition to business contacts that have helped you shape Noxy. Now, for specifically about Noxy, can you tell us, our me and our audience, more about like the innovative nature of what Noxy is doing? So, Noxy, of course, for as people know, as you heard in the intro, Noxy is addresses the telecom industry, but what is the unique angle, the unique approach that it's taken that probably would turn heads or make people wonder, okay, that's cool. I never thought about like addressing telecom in that way before.
Yeah. So actually, the strange part and actually the innovative part from Noxy is about, I mean, to give a specific background about Noxy is we are focusing on simplifying the global connectivity for for IoT devices and for enterprises, right? So we are focusing specifically on that one with by providing global coverage with no roaming. So what we found in the whole telecommunication industry, based on the talk, like conversations I had with the industry expert, with the actually top executive in telecom companies, they were telling me, hey, the telecom industry is saturated. There is no room for innovation. Everyone is trying to copy paste the model, and no one is focusing on trying to build the next big thing on telecom industry. Like, so if you check the AI industry, if you check the medical industry or healthcare and all of these things, you can see innovation at least every one year or 2 year. You can see the innovative companies that are entering that market. But in telecom, mostly it's about salespeople instead of engineers focusing on bringing innovation. And what we did specifically, this was like actually it's Nox's playbook. So we wait for people to enter that market and try to analyze the entire situation. And we left them to build something, to check how consumers behave and all of these things. And then we just enter the market and clean up the mess. So that's the way we work, right? And so we lead that way and shape the industry once everyone is in there. And what we did actually, Noxy is the world's first telecom startup that is bringing quantum computing into the telecom industry. So in the history of human beings, this is the first of its kind. And because, as I told you, like there is no room, like people are saying there is no room for innovation in the telecom industry. But what we built with our team was, we actually patented an algorithm on the quantum AI model for automatic cellular switching, right? For the no roaming strategy that we call it like roaming avoidance engine internally. And that's the whole process. The most important challenge and biggest challenge for the companies which they have sensors, which they have like for logistic containers and all of these things, is a roaming fees, which is very expensive. And all of the existing companies that were doing that was trying to like act as a broker. So they purchase the data from another broker and another broker, and they just resell it. There is no innovation, there is no specific innovative tech in there. And what we did is we spent approximately 7, 8 months on just R&D on how we can bring quantum into the telecom industry for the first time in the world.
Wow, that's amazing. So first of all, I appreciate hearing that. Like, so you're applying quantum computing into telecom. That's first of all amazing. The other thing which I want our audience to note is, as you've talked about, the telecom industry, to rephrase, the telecom industry, it's a gigantic industry. There has been a narrative around, oh, things can't change, yet there are innovators like you who are trying to make that change. I can when we one can look at similar industries like real estate, for example, it comes to mind, where like yes, like there are processes, but we can think about things like tokenization as an example. As a approach. So that's one thing I want our audience to bear in mind. But something I'd like to talk a little bit more about is the tech behind it. Can you elaborate more to the extent that's possible on how your tech is unique or different than existing like tech approaches in telecom?
Yeah, so the whole process, just to give you some, also the audience, some understanding about how the current tech is working for the IoT internet is like, you know, companies are purchasing the data packages for IoT internet from telecoms or from brokers that telecoms are reselling to them. And then they just provide you a dashboard access that you have to, just see how much data you have and then how much of them you can allocate for each of these devices that you have. That's the only process in the telecom industry. So it's a very traditional way and it's just very simple. There's no tech behind it. And most of the companies that are trying to say we are innovative in the IoT industry, they are providing, APIs that people or developers can integrate on their own solution, which is a very simple process. And it's not called innovation, to be honest, as a deeply technical founder's perspective. And what we did was we actually removed the entire broker system and we were acting as a second tier directly connected to the telecoms. And what we did was purchasing the cell tower capacity and also satellite internet and totally control the entire network operations, automations, load balancing, and also especially for all of these things, we have an AI model that works with quantum computing. So for that, we use Amazon's quantum computers so that we can do these calculations and speed up that process. So that's all about that. So what it happens is that Noxy is acting as a second tier instead of acting as a fifth tier or sixth tier broker. And it controls the entire tech by itself, by its automated processes internally.
Okay, well, that's amazing to hear. So I'm hearing both a business model innovation in like for example, addressing or removing levels of brokers, but also, of course, to your point about quantum computing, AI, automation. So I think that's something which I see, which I think is really interesting because I know like when people talk about like tech business model innovations, yeah, like there can be like and to your point about like just tacking on an API, that is an application of an existing technology which exists within a particular frame of work, and that can be very powerful. We think of GPTs, for example, that can be very that can have process efficiency, but that may not be from an IP standpoint, from a like technical standpoint, very powerful. But as you pointed out, and I appreciate that you make this distinction. The word deep tech, of course, came to mind because like I work with like deep tech startups, for example. But yeah, like yeah, there is a technical way that one can do this, and then that can be integrated into operations and the business model, which I think is good. So appreciate your perspective on that. So I want to cue our audience and tell them like we've actually had a really cool conversation. This is kind of a nice concluding part to our part one. And so with the last few minutes, I want to ask Pars if he has any like summary comments or perspectives on like his how his identity, his innovative nature, and like the innovation of Noxy. How do you like feel about that moving into the next stage of what you're doing?
Yeah, so I mean, to be honest, the identity and also the culture that you're coming from and the people that support you is really important if you want to be an entrepreneur. And just as an advice for the audience who wants to build something or be a founder, being a founder is not about making money. That's the first thing. It's all about the journey that you have. This is a long-term journey it's a long-term investment for yourself. Plus, what it means is that it's a difficult process. If you just want to be a next billionaire or these things, do not enter the entrepreneurship journey. It's all about learning, 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 and you are not sure that if your current startup that you're working is going to be successful. That's a very risky part because 99% of startups are failing. So actually, you don't know whether your startup is a hero or zero, and it will take time to see the green lights in that whole long journey.
Okay, well said. Thanks so much for sharing. So, to our audience, we're going to go ahead and take a quick intermission break, and then we'll go into part two. We'll be diving much more into the impact, lessons learned, and then concluding the centered episode. Um, so yes, to pars, I'll also be taking an intermission break, and see you very, very shortly for part two.
Yep. Bye bye.
Okay, so welcome back. So we are now going to do part two of this bonus episode. So we talked about identity, innovation, and some of Pars's reflections on that. Now we're going to be talking much more about impact and some of his lessons for the startup journey. So the first question I wanted to ask for you, Pars, was so obviously you're doing a very disruptive innovation in telecom, but which of course has like implications for how people like communicate with one another with a phone, but there are many more like implications for what that is. So can you let's maybe zoom out, like let's say Noxy works in like 5 or 10 years. What are some things that you're seeing in human culture in the telecom industry that show you that what Noxy is doing is working?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a great question, to be honest. So the whole process here, what we are doing, initially we are focusing on the businesses and enterprises, right? To automate the entire process and simplify the way their devices are connected globally, right? So there will be no disruption during the connections and all of these things. And our goal and our really, Nox's focus and its vision for the, let's say, next 5 to 10 years is to increase the R&D on the quantum computing algorithms that we have and bring our own quantum computers, plus automating the entire process for consumer side as well, because we have the exact same issue for the consumer market for the telecoms, and it's totally dominated by the existing traditional players in the consumer market. So the goal initially, we will enter the B2B market for the enterprises to provide connectivity for their devices. And then what we will do is we will come back to the consumer market by focusing to removing the reliance on long term to like removing the reliance from cell towers and directly build a connection with satellites. So actually that's the way the market is going now. Most of the telecoms, what we can see is they are trying to collaborate with the satellite communication companies, like we have lots of them, and they are trying to invest on these companies and increase the research and development because they know that on the long term we will be more relying on the satellites because we have lots of dead zones. And that would be the path for the market in the 5 to 10 years that we actually predict. So our vision is also will be the same, to just enter that market, make some revenue, and then after that, focus on the consumer side to build a community. Because what the pain point that we found on the consumer side is also there is no community. Telecoms are seeing the consumers as just a money-making machine by selling subscriptions and add-ons and everything, and not focusing on building a real community for the people, individuals, which is the most important part of a business, right? So that would be our long term, that we will go for the consumer side and also switch to full satellite version, which requires lots of R&D and lots of effort. So that would be our vision. And the strange part here is that we have a very aggressive pricing strategy based on the optimizations that we did on our tech plus on our own, internal technology. So that whole process gives us a very competitive advantage that it will be very difficult for the existing traditional players to compete with Noxy. So they have no other choice to just work with us and collaborate. So we can provide our service to them in a better price and they can resell it back. So then we will be the first tire instead of being a second tire. So that would be the goal, to lead the market.
I see. So it sounds like your market leadership, it would, so I'm seeing, so I'm hearing with your pricing strategy, with your vision, there is, of course, increased technological development with like multiple different social impact, like societal impacts in terms of like just like technological progress, but also, for example, like lower prices, which make increases accessibility, as well as sort of like as you've also talked about, like increasing access to debt, like reducing dead zones. I want to talk about this last point and in more depth. What are the social and economic impacts of reduced dead zones? And how do you think Noxy plays into that?
Yeah, so actually, the focus for that, removing dead zones, is actually coming from, solving a big problem on economical situation and also social process. Because what we see is like in Africa, there are lots of talented individuals and also lots of people that require connectivity, require internet. Then we have other regions around the world that people needs to be connected because now we're living in 2025. It's just about connectivity. And if you cannot connect your phone to an internet, or if you cannot join a call or nothing, um, it's meaningless, right? So the whole process here is providing connectivity for every single point around the world for individuals as well on long term, and helping them to use that good service with a very affordable pricing, so that not only they will be not under pressure economically, they will have access to connectivity wherever they go. That's what we are doing now for IoT devices and businesses. Right. So what will happen is, let's say if your device is traveling, let's say a logistic container is traveling from US to Europe. So it should pass the ocean, right? So in that whole process, we directly connect to the satellite internet for the connectivity. And when it passes the ocean and it comes to, let's say, Netherlands or any other country in Europe, it connects to the nearest cell tower. So that's the dynamic switching that we have, and that's about how we, bring quantum computing on that automatic process.
Okay, one, I appreciate that. One thing which just I came to mind as you're sharing was the point of access. So of course there's economic access, but also digital access. I think this is a particularly profound point because I mean I've come from a healthcare background. I know through like pretty rigorous data analysis and through lots of study, there are physical gaps in care to not being able to access a particular healthcare facility. But there, to your point, like in a um, social media, tech, like telecom world, like with innovations there, yes, digital connectivity becomes really important, particularly seeing post COVID with the rise of at a broad global scale tech video conferencing platforms like Zoom. This is a really important point, which I want to underscore, and I appreciate that you mentioned. Can you speak a little bit more about the environmental impacts of what you're doing, like the net environmental impacts? And I say this because, of course, when one thinks about quantum computing and AI, the net power is a very, very high, and the data center, like also housing data centers for that, for AI specifically, as one example, can be very, very high. So how does that like aspect of the computing power, how do you consider that when you're weighing the impact, and what's the net environmental impact that you expect?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great point, Narayan, to be honest. So the goal of Noxy, to be honest, like we are having lots of like quantum computers, but it's in cloud. Plus, we are using lots of power. So this actually, there is a negative impact on the environment because of this high consumption and like power usage. But our goal is to, I mean, if Noxy wants to, like after getting its investment and all of these things, if it brings its own physical quantum computers, we would have two options. First is covering these data centers and computing centers with the renewable energies, right? Or switching to the biological computers. There was a new biological computers that are using brain cells to compute, which does not have any negative impact to the environment. So it's actually very new. So we have to check with our team, do some more research on how actually we can bring it, or will it be efficient, same as the quantum computers or not? But the entire goal initially for the next 2, 3 years is to cover our data centers with the renewable energy so that we can at least have less negative impact on the environment. Plus, we are currently actually discussing with some NGOs so that we can actually, donate some part, like a specific percentage of our revenue to the nature, right? So to plant a tree and all of these things. And we're currently actually not only on an environmental side for the society, we put lots of value, and that's why we in Switzerland we actually officially partnered with a childcare cancer center. So it's a research center to prevent childcare cancer. They do lots of great jobs here, and we actually officially partnered with them to allocate a specific percentage of our annual revenue for them to increase the R&D to fix that problem as soon as possible, and help our community as well. So Noxy is not just about um, another telecom company that wants to make money. Not only we are focusing on the businesses now, and then we will go to the customers in the next 5 to 10 years. It's also focusing on building the next generation in a better way by considering the environmental cases, social cases, and also the economical part.
Appreciate that you mentioned, for example, the use of renewable energy, biological computing as it becomes available, as well as um, providing like percentage of revenue to various social causes that are you care for or are aligned with geography and sector. One thing which would love to know more about, what types of renewable energy have you thought about, or in a broader sense, do you view would be stronger, like meaningful, sustainable sources for telecom, or not specifically more telecom more broadly, and why?
Yeah, so currently, actually, what we found is there's lots of sources of renewable energy that we can go with that, right? But initially, what we were focusing is to cover the data centers with the solar cell panels that can just get the energy from the sun and then provide the electricity power for the data centers. So it's actually not that efficient now because quantum computers are using lots of energy. It's like consuming a lot of electricity. So we have to look for the other replacement because solar panels are like, okay, it's fine, it's good, but it's also very expensive on the initial investment part. That's why we are like looking for the best option. That's why I said like biological computers, if they have a similar computing power as the quantum computers that we are using in cloud, then actually we can switch to that one. Although it might be a little bit expensive, but the good part is that it will help us a lot to have a positive impact or at least reduce the negative impact on the environmental part as well. And that's what all big companies are trying to do now.
Well said. I appreciate this point. And one thing I just want to zoom out and maybe cue into the audience who may not have noticed this point, or just underscore this point for many to our audience, because I've seen this, what I'm about to share, a lot. So, with any business, of course, there has to be upfront investment. Oftentimes, in many businesses, I've seen this a lot. For example, again, a healthcare professional, like in doing, like understanding how service lines, clinics, etc., grow. And in the initial 1 or 2 years, there'll be cash flow negative. Similarly, to your point, the environmental impact of work in a pragmatic sense can be very negative in certain like contexts. But if there is thoughtful partnership that is initiated from the start, and if there is a lot of intention and collaboration around, say, to the point you made, Parse, about serving, supporting relevant social causes, environmental causes, that can be the growth from like net negative to net positive. It would be net positive eventually, but that curve from like going from negative to zero will be significantly accelerated. I think that's one point which I want to underscore for our audience, but I appreciate that you mentioned that both from the business side, but also from the like the energy side, and also to your point about like solar panels. I mean, it's been I know this when I was in since grade school. It is well known that solar panels, they may not be as energy efficient as other forms of renewable energy, but of course that like energy efficiency has improved, but of course does not under like impact or address the upfront cost of just the installation of solar panels. But yes, like as one understands climate, works with them, etc., and like is strategic in that, but also like having a portfolio of renewable energy that one draws from, that can also, of course, be positive. So I just wanted to add those reflections,
Exactly.
and I appreciate your perspectives on this. Now, the next thing I wanted
100% agree
to
with that.
Oh, yeah, thanks for sharing. Next thing I wanted to ask you about is I guess dive a little bit more into some of your reflections and perspectives on entrepreneurship. And I have some, I guess, more focus questions here, if you don't mind. One thing is you talked about this was you've worked in big corporations and then you
Mm.
transitioned into entrepreneurship. What are some lessons you've learned from that? And also, you've worked 9 to 5s and then gone into entrepreneurship. What are some lessons you can tell our audience about the like big corporation versus entrepreneurship, 9 to 5
Yeah.
versus entrepreneurship?
Yeah. So the whole process here, as I told you, like I was working in big corporations and like bringing in the cash to my startups. So the whole process here, what I found is big corporations, they have lots of vertical hierarchy for every specific decision-making part, which is really important for them to have this hierarchy. And like for every specific, let's say, feature or a new service they want to develop, they have this hierarchy of decision making, which slows down the company to have more innovative solutions. And when I was working in these companies, I was offering them, like I was an employee, so I offered them a free service that I can, bring more innovation or automation to their own existing products they have, or some innovative features. But the strange part is that since they have this hierarchy, it takes a lot of time and it limits the employees to have more innovation inside the company. That's why you can see like ex-Meta employees or ex-Google employees that leave the company and then build their own startup, which will be very successful. Although like after the interviews with them, they say like initially we told the Google guys that, hey, we have this, shall we launch it under Google's, infrastructure? And no one just care about that, right? So that was the first thing. Second part is that working 9 to 5 is amazing, right? It's good. You have everything, it's secured, you have your salary, you have your everything is fine. You don't need to worry about anything. You don't need to worry about your tomorrow or next week, what will happen. Everything is fixed and you just work. And sometimes I actually consider that as working like a robot because you have no innovation. And like it actually, the main reason is that the companies are limiting you to be more innovative. They tell you what to do, they specify a task for you, and like a robot you just do whatever they say, and they don't allow you to have more innovation, to optimize and make it more efficient, the operations of the company. And what I found is that entrepreneurship is an amazing journey. You learn lots of things and you have deep understanding of every specific aspects of a business. Plus, there is a limitation, to be honest, in the entrepreneurship. So you're not sure if your startup is a hero or zero. You don't know if it will be the success, if it will be the next big thing. Second, you have to work 24/7. There is no time to rest. There is no time to engage with your friends, go out, and all of these things because it's your business. No one else cares about what you're doing, right? And you have to spend weekends just working. And that's actually all entrepreneurs should do, and they do that, right? So let's say when you work for 9 to 5, after 5 o'clock, you come home and then you watch some movies, you go out with friends and do all of these things. But when you have a startup, you don't have time for that. You have to work 24/7. At some point, you don't have to sleep for like 2, 3 days, and then you have to work on something specific. You have to deliver everything very quickly, and you have to develop your decision-making skills. So it should be really fast. Let's say you have one option that you have to decide if you go with that feature one or feature two, and you cannot lose time. You have to just immediately analyze both of these situations in minutes or seconds and then decide which direction you should go. That's a very critical process. And I mean, this gives lots of amazing skills to an entrepreneur. And if you see, like most of the entrepreneurs that, let's say, leave the entrepreneurial journey after some time, they will be mostly the executives and high levels in the companies because they know whatever educated CEO should know about that.
I see. Thanks for sharing. I especially appreciate your angle on, well, two things: the perspective on the differences in the work schedule, as well as the like hierarchy and how that affects decision making, and also just the need to go ahead and be like committed to your business. But one thing I just wanted to emphasize to our audience, so what I'm receiving from Pars's perspective is a metaphorical 24/7. And what that means to you. Because for some people, I've worked with founders, they've said 24/7 means I'm not gonna eat, I'm not gonna sleep, I'm gonna completely neglect my health. I want to tell our audience that is not what is being shared here. But you need to take care of your health. You need to see that health and regeneration is a vital part of your entrepreneurship journey and serve that as it serves your body, but understand and your overall well-being, but understand that like, yes, like there is a accountability that's there, and like taking the rest that you need is critical and all the times, and like getting the food you need is critical at all the times, but ensuring that like to your point, which you've said, the ultimate boss, the ultimate person is you are the visionary. You have to go ahead and align your work. So let's, yes, doing weekend work will be like at least some hours in a weekend will be very, very important. As you've talked about, many entrepreneurs, I'm in the US, I know many entrepreneurs that do that, but they also of course take time in their own way. Sometimes like for some people I know that like they work like 24/7 for like a few days, and they take like a day of rest. Some people they have a more like
Exactly.
conventional, like I'm gonna like have like my 8 hours, and then like on a weekend or like some like a few days they really go like a legitimate 24/7. But like it's really up to each individual that is there. But I
Exactly.
appreciate like you have flavored this with the emphasis on accountability and the emphasis on growth. So I just want to like put that disclaimer because like I personally care about mental health. Mental health is really important. And like
It's
yes,
really
we
important.
Pars
Yeah.
and I Pars and I we both come from cultures like from like Turkish Iranian culture, Indian culture, where like hard work is, and US hard work is extremely important, but that should not never be at the judgment of one's well-being.
I agree with that. Yeah.
Now, the next thing which I wanted to tell you about is, so you've of course worked in like the Iranian startup ecosystem. Or you've worked in like, so you've worked in Iran, Sri Lanka, EU. You have like
Turkey. Yeah.
connections, interface with the US startup ecosystem. Specifically about the latter two, what are some of your reflections, lessons on the current state between EU versus US, and where
Mhm.
might promising startups focus on in terms of like innovation in those areas?
Yeah, so to be honest, with all respect to Europe's ecosystem and regulations, what I found initially based on the startups I had here and then all of these things, Europe focuses too much on the regulations and putting lots of pressure on startups, plus the economical dependence of European Union like makes it difficult for innovative startups to raise fundings. And like when I was discussing, I can give you an example. I discussed with two venture capitalists, one from US and one from Europe. Strangely, the one in the Europe told me that, the maximum amount we can invest is $200,000, right? And he said, unfortunately, we cannot do more. We cannot risk the capital. But the strange part is that when I talk with the guys in the US, they said $1.5 million now. So that was the difference, right? So the US ecosystem is more free for startups and for it has a risk concept that startups, if you want to build the next big thing, you have to risk your money and these types of things. And investors are looking for the next big thing opportunity. And also the government supports them for that whole investment processes. And that's why the risk capital in the US is very high. And that's why we can see most of the innovative companies from US. I mean, although there are some companies like, let's say, 10, 20, 30 companies that have lots of good reputation in the world, but if you consider their annual revenue or annual growth, all of these startups or companies in the Europe will be just one third or one tenth of even the companies in the US. And that's the whole difference between Europe and US ecosystem. And that's why we incorporated Noxy in the US. So it's a Silicon Valley startup. And that was the main reason because of the funding opportunities. Because in the Europe, what they focus is that normally venture capitals are focusing on companies that are making money, already have lots of customers, and investors just see that as a transactional investment that they just give you some money and then after 1 year they get their return. But in the US, the way it works is that companies or VCs are investing on the startup and they consider that return on investment for the next 10, 20 years when the company goes for an IPO, not just getting their return on investment after the first or second year. That's the whole different concept. And my advice for people who want to, for the audience, is that if you want to be a normal SME or like a normal startup that wants to organically like grow and also bootstrap a lot, invest your own capital in the business, it's better to establish your company in the Europe. But if you want to, if you have a vision that is the next big thing, if you validated that with your own audience, with people, and you understand that this company can be the next big thing or it can be something very big, then my advice would be going for US.
Thanks so much for sharing. So I appreciate your perspective on like different stages and different perspectives on like where one what has the vision and that informs where you perceive they should incorporate. But also to your point about like regulatory differences, cultural differences, and how those shape like what like approaches to financing, venture capital, availability of capital. Those are all, of course, important macro factors and foundational factors which may or may not be considered. So I appreciate you shedding light on those. I'm just want to say like we could like I've been enjoying this conversation. We could take this a really much further in terms of time, but we are sadly like nearing the end of our time
Yeah.
together, and that's why I'll be having some of our closing questions. So first of all, tell us how can people find you and how can they support your work?
Yeah, so you can just search parse Barghandan or parse Noxy. It will be the first page on the Google. It's all me. So you can find me very easily. Just search my name. And fortunately, we actually in Crunchbase as well and LinkedIn. So if you need any help, if you need any support, feel free to reach out to me. Plus for Noxy, it's denoxy.com. You can see the website. You can check everything there is available. And yeah, so just search me, just Google me, and then yeah, you can find everything about me.
Fantastic. And to our audience, you'll see some of the links that Pars has mentioned in the show notes. Now it's time for our signature question. Can you please fill in the blank? I amplify.
Founders,
Okay.
yeah. So it's actually a really strong signature question. So I amplify founders to not give up, and have some innovation impact on the world.
Well said. Again, very, very profound, considering the depth of our discussion. And I just want to say thanks so much for taking the time to be here, share your insights, be on our first bonus episode, Pars. It was really cool to hear about your journey in more depth and also understand the innovative approach you're taking to Noxy and all the impacts that enables. And I just want to pause and celebrate you as a founder and a leader to, in your own way, to underrepresented people worldwide. I mean, we've talked about a lot of things in today's conversation, but some things that really stood out, which I want to emphasize, is so among many male entrepreneurs that I've worked with, the point about culture, the point about relationship, this element is, and particularly male tech entrepreneurs, I don't see this point emphasized as much, and I appreciate that you've brought that this element of like caring for one's culture, support, etc. So that like relationship dynamic that you've had with your father, I think that was very, very powerful and important. The other thing which I appreciate is you've talked about like in your discussion of impact, I appreciate the nuance around that, so things like and I cue this for audience too, but like investment and then thinking about pragmatic choices you have to make, but also thinking about innovation in what you're doing there to enable impact. And also I want to applaud the fact that like you are in your own way, you've talked about your courage in and your thought about, okay, I'm going to go from Iran to then Sri Lanka. I'm then going to go to Sri Lanka, to then go to another like to Switzerland, then build that. And so like I have heard and I feel the courage that it takes to make those decisions. And then seeing that translated into your desire to create in your own way, if we want to use the word a moonshot with what Noxy is doing in the tech industry. So I applaud. There are many things, but those are things that come to mind. I want to thank you for showcasing these to our audience. And again, thank you so much, Pars.
Yeah, so thank you very much for giving this opportunity, and it was a great conversation, and I hope I had some positive impact for the audience who is listening on that.
Again, you're most welcome, Pars, for allowing you to be on our podcast. Again, thank you so much for sharing to our audience. I hope you had a great, enjoyed this. One thing I just want to underscore is if you are a founder, of course, you can, if you want an episode like this, in like more depth, or you can also customize it to what you want. Pars, for example, he wanted to go ahead and do this now because like he is in a phase of like building Noxy, like really like spreading the word out, and he wanted to like do this as part of that. And also he wanted to have a deeper conversation in our standard format. But if you want something like this, then tell me whether or not you've been on the podcast, whether or not you've been on Amplified Weekly. Just tell us, let us know. But also, yeah, like to Pars's point, like look him up and as you would look up any of our guests, and then see ways in which you can like of course, help him if you feel called, but also see ways in which that can help you develop your understanding of telecom, different industries, and like how that can go ahead and help you amplify your own journey in your own way. So again, I want to conclude by saying thanks so much, Pars. I really enjoyed our conversation. I know we will be in touch, but bye for now.
Yep, bye-bye.
To our listeners, thanks for tuning in to this episode of Founders Amplified. I hope you're feeling as inspired as I am. If you'd like to learn more about our guests and support them, check out the show notes for their details. If you enjoyed this episode, please give us a rating, share it with someone you know, and follow us for more inspiring episodes like this one. If you're a founder who is driving innovation and impact in any industry or sector anywhere in the world and would like to be a guest, we'd love to hear from you. Check out the show notes for more information. And finally, remember that you, yes, you, have the power to amplify the voices around you. Whether you're a colleague, family member, friend, funder, mentor, or just another fellow human, your support matters. So I invite you to celebrate and uplift the underrepresented innovators in your life who are driving innovation and impact. Let's create a better future for everyone, together. Until next time, stay curious, stay bold, and keep amplifying.